This video is sponsored by Incognito. Fun fact, there was an entire city in ancient Egypt that was full of people who didn't have any noses. Sounds kind of strange, but it's actually true. The city is called Rhino Cholera, and it means nose cutters in Greek. In order to actually end up in this city, you'd have to commit a bad crime, since that kind of punishment was only used on the most dangerous criminals. Okay, so imagine you just killed someone, and you were sent to Rhino Cholera. What would that look like? Well, for starters, your nose would be brutally hacked off, and you'd be sent to the prison. Now that you look like Voldemort's cousin, it's time to get settled into the prison, and hey, make sure you enjoy your stay here, because after you die, you're not going to be making it to the afterlife. That's because the Egyptians believed that keeping your body intact was crucial to making the journey to the afterlife once you were dead. So, by removing part of someone's body, you would ruin the journey for them, which would mean they don't make it to the afterlife. But now that you're in prison, it's not so bad. Apart from the fact that you barely get to eat, everything's diseased, and you're forced to work all day with very few breaks. But hey, at least you don't have to smell the corpses on the ground. You know, no nose and all that. And if you somehow survived your sentence, you would never be able to fit into society again because your noseless face was a sign that you were a criminal, meaning you'd just be homeless for the rest of your life. So, for future reference, just try not to commit any heinous crimes. Or if that's too difficult, just try not to get your nose cut off. Now, with that image stuck in my mind, it's time to move on to the next time period. One of my personal favorites, the ancient Greeks. These guys are known for being pretty damn smart. They invented stuff like medicine, the alarm clock, vending machines. And of course, putting people inside bronze statues of bulls and burning them alive. Yup, we knew it was coming. Time to talk about the brazen bull. It was used on people like enemies of the state, criminals, or pretty much anyone that the leaders didn't like. If you were one of the lucky few that were sent on a one-way trip into this personal spa, you would not enjoy it, to say the least. First, they'd kind of just beat you up, and then they'd whip you, so you wouldn't have enough energy to do anything about your impending doom, and then you'd be tossed into the bull. At the start, it wouldn't feel that bad. It'd just be like mildly hot. But soon, things would start to heat up, to a point where the water on your skin would begin to boil like a dumpling getting steamed. But unlike a dumpling, you feel pain. And the pain you're experiencing is impossible to put into words. At one point, your skin literally starts carbonizing. If you don't know what that means, picture a piece of meat on a grill that's burning and turning into a coal. A piece of coal. Yet it would probably hurt. Kind of a funny story. The maker of the machine was actually tricked into going into the bowl to demonstrate the acoustics. But before he could get out, they locked him and toasted him alive. Yep, stories don't get much funnier than that. You know what else is funny? That's right, getting nailed into barrels. Whoa, crazy coincidence, that's exactly what they did in the ancient Persian Empire. Okay, this story is really disturbing, so if you're eating right now, tough luck. Getting nailed into barrels is even worse than it sounds, since the nailing part is only the beginning of the torture method. First, they'd put honey and milk all over your body, before putting you into a barrel with your head or hand sticking out. This itself isn't too bad, because it would only be mildly uncomfortable. So after that, the hammer nails into the barrel, which would stab the victim if they tried to move. And you're probably wondering what the honey was for, right? And no, it's not for Winnie the Pooh cosplay. They did it because after they put the nails in, they would force feed you rotten food that was infected with parasites. These parasites would feast their way through your organs as your body started to rot. After about 2 weeks of this, they would finally die. Yummy. Next up, the early Middle Ages are sometimes called the Dark Ages, which is because pretty much everything went wrong during that time, like trading and classical learning, for example. But one thing's for sure, coming up with new torture methods is not on that list. During this time, they came up with all sorts of crazy methods of hurting someone, like for example, the breaking wheel. You can probably figure out how this works. You pretty much just tie someone to a wheel and have the strongest guy you know whack them with an iron bar until their bones snap. For the people on the wheel, they would wish it ended there, but nope, we still have a lot of torture left. Once they sorta just broke all the bones you have, they would start weaving your broken limbs through the wheel, causing an insane amount of pain. Cause like, imagine you broke your pointer fingers and you had to jam them into a Chinese finger trap. Yeah, that'd be an equivalent amount of pain to the breaking wheel. Yep, totally, that's a good metaphor. Anyway, in drawings from the early Middle Ages, you would see people whose arms are literally bending in 6 different places, which is more places than a normal arm is supposed to bend in. And I know what you're probably wondering. Did it spin? Yes, it did. In some cases, they would spin the wheel like some sort of cartel Ferris wheel, so the crowd can watch as the victim gets slowly rotated which would cause their broken limbs to slide around, causing a lot of pain. They could either have the wheel be horizontal or vertical, depending on how the executioner was feeling that day. It's not exactly known if this torture method was always lethal, but in most cases the victim would die from blood loss or just pure exhaustion from the torture. The entire wheel with your body on it would then be displayed as a warning sign for anyone who might think about committing any crimes. Yeah, cool. You know what's better than being horrifically maimed? That's right, privacy. Literally thousands of companies are currently collecting and trading our data. I've had experiences where I gave my email address to some random site so I can access an article that I need for one of these videos, only to discover that I've condemned myself to eternally getting spam calls and emails from mainland China. Seriously, why is it always mainland China? A lot of times, the companies or services that we sign up for are selling our personal information. From your legal name to home address to social security number. Wait, we're supposed to keep those secret? Okay, the thing is, we do have a legal right to request that these companies storing our information delete everything they have on us. But that's a long and tedious process. It can literally take years of back and forth to do it yourself. Fortunately, we can just get Incogni to do it. Sign up for Incogni, then just sit back and relax. Watch as their legal team forces these companies to delete that precious personal information. Watch as they metaphorically invade mainland China, or whatever other legal magic they do. I just signed up and look at all these companies that have already removed my data. Nice. Go to incogni.com/Clevin and use code Clevin to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That is incogni.com/Clevin, and link is in the description. Use code Clevin or click the link below to take your personal data off the market. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring this video. Honestly, the Renaissance was a pretty metal time in terms of punishments. Like, imagine if I worked at the police and I interrogated someone by having rats eat through their body. I'd probably be sent to jail or a mental institution for being batshit crazy. But this, weirdly enough, actually happened multiple times. For example, during the Dutch Revolt, the Dutch people were kind of pissed at the Spanish for ruling over them. So they had like a whole war going on that lasted 80 years, blah blah. But that's not important, we're here for rat torture. One of the people that was involved in this revolt was Diederik Sonoy. This guy was a military leader and he was already known for being pretty insane, using very interesting techniques during battle and overall just being a silly guy. At one point, this silly little guy really didn't like one of the prisoners they had. So he filled up a bowl with rats, placing it against the prisoner's stomach and lit it on fire. Now, because the rats were scared of the fire, they started trying to eat their way out. And since they couldn't get through the metal bowl, they went through the prisoner's body. Yeah, the rats straight up ate their way through this guy's flesh, then his organs, and out the back in order to escape the fire. That must have been an extremely slow and painful death, and yeah, no wonder it's not allowed today. The 1940s were known for all sorts of things. For example, Frank Sinatra became popular during this time, and the Second World War broke out. This new war brought with it a lot of death and pain, most of which happened from getting shot on the battlefield. But during the war, they also invented a bunch of new torture methods. Like, for example, bamboo torture. The Japanese would restrain someone above a bunch of young bamboo plants. Now, the cool thing about bamboo is that it grows insanely fast, at 1.5 inches per hour, and it pretty much grows through anything that you put in front of it. So you could probably imagine what would happen when you put bamboo below a living person. At first, the bamboo just pushes against the victim's body, but slowly over time, it would start to go through their skin, then their organs, and it would come out through the other side. This form of punishment could take several days to kill someone, and it's for sure one of the most brutal forms of torture out there. It's unclear if bamboo torture had been used before the Second World War, and it's also not clear just how often bamboo torture was actually used, but it sure did work for the Japanese as a way to scare and control prisoners of war. Now it's time for the modern ones, and I can honestly say, we as humans have really not lost any of our skills. We're still really good at causing pain. Go us! The first of the modern methods is called necklacing, and to be honest, when I read this, I didn't think it was real, but here we are. It starts by grabbing a person by the neck and placing a gasoline-filled tire over their heads, which locks them in place. The victim is then set on fire, which keeps getting fueled from the gasoline that's in the tire. At this point, you're just straight up burning alive, and the tire is now also starting to drip melting rubber onto your skin, which only causes more pain. In total, around 300 to 700 people have died from necklacing, mostly being criminals or sex offenders. This method isn't really used by the Western world, and it's only really being used in Africa. But that doesn't mean that the Western world doesn't have their own weird torture methods. An example of one of these is white torture. You may have heard of this method before because it's pretty well known, but if you don't, here's how it goes. First, they sort of just dump you into a white room with nothing around you but the color white. White rice on a white plate, white guard uniforms that wear special shoes to muffle their steps, you get the idea. Leaving someone in a room like this with no outside stimulation would cause them to go crazy, which is exactly the point. And it's very effective. People legitimately do go crazy inside these rooms. Anyway, that's the end of the video, so click this video here, and if you made it to the end, subscribe.